Shalom, shalom. This week's Parsha is Parshat Vayigash, and I want to address this very popular concept that's talked a lot nowadays, and this is the concept of manifesting. And I'm a huge believer in the power of words and what we say and the effect it has on the exterior world. And it could be, for those of you who are more mystical, it could be in terms of an energy source, but really the way that what we say has an effect on how we behave and how we act and how we influence events, it's just non-deniable. And we see this in the case of Yaakov and his life for the negative a lot. He was very fearful, and you see it in a few stories. First of all, when he asked Yosef to go down and check on how his brothers are doing. He was worried. He's worried how the brothers are doing. And that worry about something going wrong or being wrong amongst brothers, what happened in the end? Yosef gets thrown in the pit, and Yaakov ends up thinking either he's torn, ripped to shreds, dead, or missing, or some horrible fate. We're told that Yaakov was afraid when he was coming back from the house of Lavan, that he was afraid to have Dinah exposed to Esav. Maybe Esav would take her, and who knows what's going to be, and he hides her in a box. And what happens to Dinah? He's so afraid about Dinah's well-being and what Esav's going to do to her, and she ends up getting raped by Shem. And he seems to be fearful and negative, and the negative talk seems to really influence the way things happen. And it could just be by the actions that he takes, but nonetheless, however you see it, coincidentally, the things that he's worried about, bad things happen, and he has worry, and he sees things in that kind of light. And then we see that he's aged so much in this week's parsha when he finally meets Par, and Par's like, oh my, how old are you? And he tells him how old he was, and he says, but you know what, I haven't reached the years of my father's, and my life's been difficult, and all this. And every time we speak words of expressing over and over again, and things that we worry about and how bad things are, they tend to just take off that way. And it's very important not to get caught up in those ways and in those things. And it's very interesting because when Yosef, finally, in this week's parsha, he says to his brothers, he tells them who he is, and he said, go bring, your families and dad up and all your stuff to live here in Goshen till the, throughout the famine. And Yaakov goes. He says, of course, in the negative, I want to see my son before I die. And even when he's there, he's like, oh, I see you, like, basically now I can die. Everything in the negative instead of appreciating it in the moment. But we see that God, it's addressed in his relationship towards God also. Because when he's on his way, it talks about how he brings sacrifices to the God of his father Yitzchak, which is quite fascinating, because in the Parsha, when God first reveals himself back when he has to flee from Esav, and God reveals himself, he reveals himself as the God of his father Abraham and the God of Yitzchak. But when it's talking about his father, it addresses Abraham, because God wants Yaakov to approach him and his life more in the way that Abraham did, in love, in giving, in abundance, not in fear. Like Yitzchak, his immediate father, everything having to do with Yitzchak, we're seeing attached to this concept of fear. I mean, we're taught with the words Pachad Yitzchak. It's a catchphrase we always use, the fear, the dread of Yitzchak when referring to God. Yitzchak is one whose life was almost sacrificed to God. And when we talk about Yitzchak, it's the God of din, of strict judgment, of fear, And God didn't want Yaakov's approach to be that way. God was telling Yaakov when he said, the God of your father Abraham is approach life and approach me in this way of abundance, and to speak that way and to be that way, and life will be that way. But yet here at the end of his life, and he's going to see Yosef, he still has that fear. He's still talking in the negative. And it's really sad. It really aged him that Paro was so shocked by how he looks, like as if he never saw somebody that old in his life. And this is so, if you look at this and you compare or contrast it to the way that Yosef was, when Yosef acts, he doesn't act in the negative. Everything he says, come, you will tell Paro that you're shepherds so that you can come and live here. Never entertaining the possibility of it's going to be bad. He tells Paro there's going to be years of famine, but this is how we're going to remedy it. Everything with a solution, everything with an eye about how can we take our bad situation and turn it around, as opposed to his father, who saw a part of a situation that was going all right, but he saw the potential for bad and worry, and in the end, the bad things happened. And you see Yosef, who saw something, tackled it, and spoke in the terms of, what can we do? How can we do? How can we fix this? And this is how it will be good. And then it was. So what I'm trying to say for everybody out there is, we tend sometimes, guilty, of being negative and of saying, oh my God, this and that, and bad things. And when we think bad is going to happen, we don't take the actions for something better to happen. We tend to say, oh, I knew that was going to happen, because we might have caused that to happen. But we should, it's okay to have concerns. It's okay to have worries. It's okay to say, okay, this is the situation, but how can we rise above? What can we do? We'll do this and it will be good. And be positive. And then we'll take positive action and have positive things happen. So that's my message for today. I hope we can take off with that, and I wish you all a very good Shabbat Shalom.